And it made me think, affairs in the digital age, a death by 1,000 cuts.
Greetings, humans. Hello, welcome, willkommen. So today I would like to talk about something a little bit, different than perhaps what I usually talk about. But I was watching, I was procrastinating. I was on YouTube, and I came across this TED Talk about essentially desire, monogamy, and infidelity, and I was like, well, why the hell not? It's like 20 minutes, let's see what's going on. To be real with you, I was looking for documentaries about male sexuality out of curiosity. So that's what I found, this is what I've got, and it actually turned out pretty interesting. I found some really interesting things in there that I thought would be, in line with being interesting to talk about, because I think they capture the nature of modern dating quite well, at least in my own experience. So I thought we would get into that. So who is this girl? What's she talking about? What's the point of this? Well, to begin with, she's talking about, she's some sort of relationship therapist, and I assume that, I don't know it to be true, but I assume it from the way she talks, and from the sort of repository of data she just has stored in her head about people's lives and stories that they've endured in relation to dating, desire, and monogamy and infidelity, and so on. So the first thing she talks about, the first thing she sort of traces that's relevant are sort of ideas of monogamy and how they've changed over time. But one thing that's pretty central to that, despite the changing over time, despite how relationships have changed, there is one sort of persistent idea that, lives within the human beings, and that is the idea of monogamy in some capacity, or the idea that there is one person for you. That can be traced all the way back to Plato's Symposium with Aristophanes. So Plato's Symposium was basically a writing by Plato that supposedly was a gathering of philosophers and different characters of the city, and they all were having a symposium about love, to discuss love and discern its meaning. And Aristophanes, he when it was his turn, he stood up, with his drink in hand, and his idea was that human beings were all once two human beings in one, and that the gods, fearing the power they would have, cut them into two, condemning them forever to search for their other half. And so, as we have this idea of this soulmate, this idea that there's one theoretically perfect person for you with whom your negatives and pros balance and align, and you're madly in love, and so on, you live together forever. So we have this sense, we have this ideal, I think. Of course, people vary, and some people are probably more cynical than others, some people are more idealist, some people are probably more pragmatic, such as, for example, perhaps there is such a person or many possible people within the billions of people that exist, and so on. But nonetheless, this idea is relatively persistent. And so she starts talking about monogamy in the 20th century versus now. And when she's talking about in the 20th century, we had this idea that you be with one person for your whole life. You get married, that's it. And the joke she makes is that it's so important that even in the Bible, it's a sin to not only commit adultery, but to even think about it. It's very, very ingrained. But so the idea, of course, the 20th century is that you're one person for the rest of your life, and that's it, ideally. But then as we move into the 21st century, and I'm sure there are other cases too in the 20th century, let's be realistic here. But as we really move into now, the new norm is not that you're with one person your whole life. It's that you're with one person at a time for, the course of your life. Maybe you'll meet the soulmate, maybe you won't. But the idea is still there. It's this idea that just one person at a time. It's very important to go against that. It's a deep betrayal, right? I think it's pretty hard to deny how bad it actually feels to be cheated on. If you've been cheating on, you probably relating tremendously. But it's a pretty, we can conceive of it as a very grave injustice. So the reason she's talking about that is because she's talking about what is the state, given that monogamy has changed, what is the sort of state of long-term relationships now? And the statistic she gives for the 21st century is that depending on how you define cheating, the statistics vary from 25% of people cheat to 75% of people cheat. So there's physical acts that are, like quite literally like la, 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 or something like that, and maybe a little different, but also, texting perhaps, leaving maybe picture comments. I don't know if that's a thing, but there's a continuum of possible cheating acts, or acts that would sort of transgress the boundaries of what ought to be acceptable that people do. So that's a huge number, right? And there's a lot of problems with the 21st century. I mean, given that we have, things like Tinder and all of these dating apps, and at the swipe of a finger, you can have someone probably pretty quickly. There's always this looming sense of something better. And so she wants to sort of explore this logic behind the something better. What's driving people toward that? What's fueling this movement towards not one person but many possible people? And so let's listen to her first assessment, shall we?
But then we have another paradox that we're dealing with these days. Because of this romantic ideal, we are relying on our partner's fidelity with a unique fervor. But we also have never been more inclined to stray. And not because we have new desires today, but because we live in an era where we feel that we are entitled to pursue our desires. Because this is the culture where I deserve to be happy.
So that's interesting. The culture where I deserve to be happy. Is that true? Is there a sort of entitlement culture that we live in? I mean, I don't know. Let's continue. Let's see where she's going.
And if we used to divorce because we were unhappy, today we divorce because we could be happier. And if divorce carried all the shame, today, choosing to stay when you can leave is the new shame.
Right. So what she's saying is that back in the 20th century, by way of our old norms, what used to be the shame, or what used to be shameful, was to deviate from the norm of being with one person for your whole life. It was shame to divorce. But now as we move past that notion of one person for your whole life and into the idea of one person at a time, the true shame, since there's so many possible people that you could be with, is to neglect your own happiness by not moving on from people that you know aren't right for you. Or that, I think that's essentially it. The shame consists in not doing what you're entitled to, and what you're entitled to is being happy. But that's pretty problematic. I think some interesting questions are, like, what led to this? Because I think it is pretty agreeable. I mean, I don't say you could deny the fact that it's not the norm anymore for someone to be with one person for their whole life. What's interesting is what started that. I mean, the sort of sexual revolution, I believe the 70s is probably part of that, and also women having access to birth control is obviously part of that. And I think a part of that obviously is technology, and don't freak out on me, but probably capitalism too, right? Because part of capital, the expansion of the economy in that way, and of our jobs and lives in that way, is this fast service, right? This instant gratification that you can get whatever you want, wherever you want, at any time you want. Even people, even human beings, by virtue of technology, right? Just pull out that phone, download Tinder, bada boom, bada bing, you're banging something. But the idea is, I think it's pretty tied in that way, pretty tied up, that it's this sort of mutual feedback loop. But I mean, in terms of causation, for what I don't think there could just be one cause for, if we want to accept this idea of entitlement culture and of, I deserve to be happy, therefore don't stay with one person, just keep moving on until I find that ideal perfect person. If we want to accept that, then I think the causes are multifaceted for sure. I mean, I think we've got to include birth control, sexual revolution, and I don't see how we can divorce it from the nature of our economic existence as well, because our economic existence is our social existence. And I think those things are all deeply embedded and then, of course, fed by technology. So this is deeply problematic, right? Because part of what's problematic about the ideas of the soulmate or the person that's, absolutely perfect for you is that that's an completely contrived ideal. It's a completely, the imagination seems to have created it, or perhaps evolutionary processes led to it, probably particularly in women. But the problem, of course, is that I think part of the relationships, or the idea behind maybe relationships in the 20th century, was that maybe people aren't perfect, maybe no one's perfectly perfect, but the idea is that you find a person and you stay with them and you endure life together. You make the choice and you make the negotiations necessary to live in the world together and support each other amongst the chaos. So then the problem now, I would think, would then be that in your continual searching for something better and someone better, and this belief that you deserve happiness and this person isn't meeting your needs, well, then you could be chasing a ghost, right? Because if that perfect ideal, that perfect clicking between two people is, either a very rare occasion or not completely true, but more so imagined, then it's with every instance that you're leaving someone because they don't quite meet your standards, then you're probably passing up all of the possible opportunities that you could have built something with someone, that you could have had perseverance and made the right decisions and negotiations with each other in order to invigorate yourselves and to fix things. And you did that just so that you could keep chasing the same situation, chasing your tail. I mean, that kind of seems like it to me. That kind of seems like an accurate assessment, at least by my own standards. So she gets into another really, really interesting thing here. So now she starts to move into talking about infidelity, about why we cheat, and how that's related to these ideas of entitlement and self-betterment. And so let's check them out.
That when we seek the gaze of another, it isn't always our partner that we are turning away from, but the person that we have ourselves become. And it isn't so much that we're looking for another person, as much as we are looking for another self.
Wow, so I love that. That's freaking intense. Even the look she gives after. Let's watch that one more time. I feel you. But no, so the idea is that when we're looking for another person, if we put this in the context of what she's previously said, that when we're looking for another person in this new age, under this new idea of entitlement and of that we deserve to be happy, that what we're really realizing in the relationship is that we don't like our situation, that we don't like either how our lives are playing out in relation to this person, or who we're becoming in relation to this person, or the experiences that we maybe are missing out on or not happening with this person, and the fact that those experiences and things and desires that you want them to do that they're not doing, that these are essential ideas to you, that these are essential features of your happiness or of your contentment for which you want your life to reflect, or that you want to see yourself reflected in those things, and that you want that certain ideas, certain things that would make you happy, that you want them to be you, that you want them to be your life. And the fact that a person isn't meeting them is probably makes you think that they just can't. Perhaps that they can't, and that you want them so much that it's worth it to just get rid of this person and move on towards how you could have the sort of love or sexual life that you desire, instead of negotiating with that person and trying to create that life. But I think the ultimate point is that what's fundamentally at the bottom of it is you yourself and the life that you want for yourself, and how, to what extent or what manifestation of happiness in relation to love that you want to see. So it's sort of so I think it comes back to indeed these ideas of individuation, of what you want, of what's good for you, what you want your life to look like. But the consequences, are the consequences are the consequences of that kind of thought process? Because I understand that thought process. I mean, that thought process makes sense, and honestly, I have felt that way myself, that I don't like who I am or what my life is in relation to this person. But yeah, it's, still pretty much love that person. But still, the point is that, are the consequences worth it? Like, is this search, this desire for what would make you happy, is it really going to lead to it if it's fueled by those kinds of ideas about entitlement and about I deserve to be happy and so on? Is it really going to lead you into ever an end point to it? Is there ever going to be a point at which you're actually happy if you continually follow that logic rather than perhaps the old traditional logic of perseverance and working together? But I think that's a pretty big dilemma, right? Because in a sense, I think that latter portion of what she said is it's very difficult, right? Because whatever life you build with another person or whatever relationship you have with another person is essentially a part of how you're shaping your existence. It's how you're shaping your life, your time, your only time here on earth. You're shaping it with them. So it's obviously, it's essential to you that goes in some capacity the way that you want it to go. Because if it's not going the way that you want it to go and it's a part of your life, then your life isn't going the way you want it to go. So how do you reconcile that thought process with trying to still have some sense of perseverance or continuation in a relationship to sort of build that, bond that you would be otherwise continually seeking by just seeking out other people? Like, how do you balance creating the life you want with another person with your own desire of what you want your life to be? How do you reconcile it with wanting to have a long-term relationship, but that relationship that you're in just isn't quite there? How do you reconcile that, wanting that, but also wanting to live the kind of life you want to live, and realizing that you want to be with someone, but you want that person to meet your standards? But if you don't eventually stop and just work it out with one person, you're just going to be caught in a continual cycle, if such a thing as that, mystical connection isn't quite accurate, right? So I think it's deeply problematic. I think it's a pretty big dilemma, and I think that we are indeed, I think I come back to realize, I think we are continually fed these ideas that is what we ought to do, keep searching, keep looking, monogamy isn't real. I mean, we have people, even MGTOW emerging, pardon my previous comments about MGTOW, but we have men actually rebelling against even being with women on account of some of the problems attached to it and what they fear could happen to themselves. And so the state of relationships is strange. So what to do? What would be the stoic approach to dealing with this strange modern existence, this reality of relationships and the contemporary problems therein? I think the answer is first most pragmatic. It's to understand the situation, to have a comprehensive understanding of what is and what could be, and to sort of to understand the uncertain nature of relationships, right? So you could have all of these understandings yourself. Like, you could realize everything we've just talked about, come to these conclusions, and you could determine, what, I want to build something. I want to build something. But the fact of the matter is that you'll never have control over knowing whether or not that the person that you're with or start being with feels exactly the same, right? So you're, and especially in this culture of individuation and of Tinder possibilities, you have no way of knowing that person's faithful, or that they will continue to be faithful, or that it will work out. There's so many options being fed to people, and so many of these ideas about entitlement, about wanting to be happy, that I don't think there's a conceivable way in which one should be. I don't think you should put too much stake on it, is what I'm getting at here. I think that the Stoic approach is to understand the nature of things, of what's going on right now, and the sort of collective norms surrounding these issues, and to understand what could happen. So I think the Stoic wouldn't turn away from relationships or turn away from the possibility, because I think that would kind of be a waste of life, right? You only have one chance to live, and you might as well make the best of it, because you're going to be dead one day, and you're not going to be anything at all. And you won't regret not doing it, but I mean, you might as well have done it. So I think the Stoic answer is to do what comes about, to not miss opportunities for yourself, to see and to try and to make your best possible effort, because there will be no other time in which for you to try to make your best possible effort, but to at the same time be aware of what could happen and to be aware of the possible consequences. I mean, you could abstain altogether, but I think you're missing out on an experience of life if you do that. So I think, as I said, the Stoic approach is to pragmatically understand how things are, and from that point to do what's right, to do what's in keeping with your character and your desires. But if things end badly or in line with the sort of logic we've been exploring, well then that's just too bad. So I think the answer is to, not that you deserve to be happy, but that you owe it to yourself to try to be content. I think that's sort of one of the underlying points of Stoicism. It's that happiness is an elated emotion. Contentment is a wiser emotion. It's I'm okay no matter what. It's even without someone, I'm gonna be okay. Just by myself, I'm gonna be okay. Or if I'm with someone, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna find things maybe I'm just falling back right into that logic, because I was gonna say find things that make me content, or focus on yourself, your own self-development. I mean, there's so many things you could do, but at the fundamental level, I don't think Stoicism would reject even trying. I just think it would focus on knowing what could happen and knowing how to be okay, content if it does happen. So that's my relationship assessment. If you haven't subscribed, do it.